going to go ahead and put our JavaScript in a separate file from our HTML because it'll get unwieldy. So create a new file. We'll call it index.js. And now our HTML file needs to know about this. So in your HTML, at the bottom of the body, after the section but before the closing body tag, let's add a script tag. Now you could put JavaScript right in between those two things, but we're going to use an external file. So in the opening tag, add an attribute called source, src, and we're going to give it the relative path of our JavaScript file. It's in the same directory as this, so we can just type index.js. And to make sure that we didn't mess that up, I'm going to go ahead and make index.js do something, anything. Console.log, the string, it worked. Don't forget to save. There'll be a little dot up here if you haven't saved. Refresh the page, and I hope that right off the bat, yay, it logged, it worked. Why did I bother with that? Just to make sure I didn't screw up where the script tag points. If you write 100 lines of JavaScript and then check it and everything's not working, but you get no error messages, drive yourself crazy, it's because it doesn't even know about the JavaScript file yet. So we're just testing that out. Now that it worked, I don't actually need that there. What I promised I want to do is handle the occasion on which the form gets submitted. So first, let's grab the form. Const person form equals document dot query selector, not query selector all because I just want one element. And I will use the ID person form. If I want to make sure that that thing is a form, you could always put form hash person form. Doesn't matter. You'll notice I'm not using semicolons, despite promising that this is a semicolon and curly brace language. I will explain why tomorrow because we're out of time for that today. But the short version is, with modern JavaScript tools, it's not really necessary anymore. They were always optional, but now it's actually safe to omit them, so we do. All right, now let's see what we can do. We want something to happen. When an event occurs, the event we want is form submission. The event is called submit. There are all kinds of events in JavaScript. Click is an event. Mouse move is an event. Mouse down is an event. Mouse up is an event. There are tons of them. Right now, we're interested in the submission of a form. So that's the one we're going to listen to. And we want to listen for this event to occur on that form. So we're going to mess with our person form variable. It has a method called, hey, look, it's the very first one on the list. Add event listener. Does just what it sounds like. The first argument is the type of event we're listening for. It's called submit as a string. The next argument is a function that's going to run when that occurs. So we could write a function and give it a name and put it here, or we could make an anonymous function in line. We'll go ahead and write one and learn about anonymous functions later. So let's go ahead and create a function up here. We'll just say function, handle submit, clever name. And then we just put a reference to that as our second argument here. Notice I am not putting open close parentheses here. You pass the actual function as an object as the argument to add event listener. If I were to put the parentheses there, it would put the return value of that function, and that's not what we want. We're not going to fire handle submit ourselves. JavaScript is going to fire it for us when this event occurs. So for add event listener, we're telling it listen for the event submit on this element, person form. When that happens, run the function that I provided, which is handle submit. Let's put a console log in here. Submit, all caps. We're going to yell. We're excited about it. Refresh the page. Tappity tappity, submit. I was lied to. Uncle Dave's incompetent. I knew it. Well, shucks. It didn't work. Why didn't it work? Well, it still submitted the form, which meant that it redrew the whole page, which meant maybe it put it in the console. I don't know, but it happened too fast for me to see it. So what we have to do is stop that form submit from happening. So the default behavior for a form submit is that it submits the form to another page or itself and refreshes. We have to stop that behavior. So fortunately, this is pretty easy. When an event fires and calls the function that we provided, it will pass in an argument, which is an event object. So our handle submit function is going to receive this event object, whether we specify it or not. JavaScript never enforces the number of arguments that a function receives. You can always pass more than it receives. You can always pass less. It's not going to enforce it. If it's really important that they pass those in, you're going to have to do a safety check yourself. JavaScript is just so darn flexible. So it's going to pass in the event, so if we want to do something with it, we should give it a name like we just did. And that event object includes a method called prevent default. So we will run event prevent default. That will keep the form from actually submitting. Because when we add an event listener, we're not replacing the behavior of form submit. We're just adding to it. So we'll make sure we intercept the default behavior and prevent it. Then let's console log submit. We're not quite as excited as we were a minute ago because we're not sure. All right. Let's refresh the page. Tappity tappity. Hey, it worked. Now, why did I listen for the form to be submitted instead of listening for the button to be clicked? Because you can submit a form by pressing enter from inside the form field, right? If I listened for that button to be clicked, it wouldn't have caught that. Not terribly exciting. But let's look at one more thing so that there's maybe something you could actually do for practice with what we've learned. How do we get what we typed in here? So there are a few ways we could do this. We need to get the form that this fired on. Now we've already saved the form as a variable, but that's cheating. Because what if we had more than one form on the page and they all used the same handle submit function? We need to be sure that it was the one that actually got submitted. So another thing that this event object has is something called the target. Event.target will point to the element on which the event occurred. So what was submitted? The form. So event.target should actually give us the form that we can do things with. So let's just say const f equals event target. Now how do we get that input? Once again, there are several ways we could do it. But since we gave that form field a name of person name, we actually just say f.personname. And let's just console log that and see what it gives us. Refresh, type something like Lex. Okay, and it put out the actual node, the actual input, not just what was typed in there. Who knows how to get what was typed in there? Anybody? Web people? What's that? Louder? So that'll get us, we may want to do that probably, but to get what you typed in there, do you have an answer? That's a good guess. But in the case of an input, there is no closing tag, so there's actually nothing. There's nothing inside it. It is .value. Oh, cuss. Autocomplete. .value. Try that out. Refresh. Type something in there. Yay, it worked. Thanks for guessing. Have a sucker. Get it? So now I suppose you could do something with that. What you could like change the H1, couldn't you? How do we do that? What if we say const name equals f.person name value? Then you know how to get the H1, right? Document query select, selector H1, and then .text content. Remember .text content that we used? That's pretty exciting stuff. So let's say document.query selector H1 .text content equals name. Think that'll work? Let's see here. Jules, great big letters. Pretty neat. We're masters. All right, so now we've done a tiny little bit of something. We've talked about the history of JavaScript at great length, talked about how to get the most out of this boot camp. So we're all prepared to work very hard, right? Yes. What could we do to show off our newfound knowledge? First, let's go ahead and commit what we have, because we did some serious hard work here. This is good stuff. Good, meaningful stuff. So, right now, this stuff lives in our working directory. Git needs to know about it. It needs to be in the index, so we're going to use the add command. First, let's do a git status. Notice, now we have two files. We modified index.html, and index.js is brand new. So to tell it about these changes, we're just going to tell it to add everything. Git add dot being current directory, and that'll just take all of the uncommitted changes and stage them. Then, now that they're in the index, to put them in our history for realsies, we're going to commit. Git commit -m update heading with form value, with text box value, sure. To get it on GitHub, git push. So now that's up here. We now have 3 commits instead of 2. Should you need to look at my code, a link to this repository will be on the website. That'll probably be updated probably before 1:30 with a link to that. So you can browse this code if you need to. Now we need to come up with some dang homework, which I will put in the README. Day 1 homework. Add another input to the form. Use the values from both inputs in the H1. Super, mega, bonus credit. add an empty paragraph to the page. Use the form values to do something with that paragraph. Super, mega, bonus, credit, hyper fighting. Yeah, it's kind of tempting. Change the appearance of the paragraph. Think CSS. Based on a value from the form. For example, put the name of a color in a text box and draw a nice pretty border in that color. Now, we haven't covered how to do this stuff, but if you want to be adventurous and see if you can learn how to do that with JavaScript, go for it. That's why it's super mega bonus credit hyper fighting. But we are not folks who do the bare minimum, are we? We want to get the most out of this. So we will do some exploration on our own to learn how to do it. Or we'll all ask our friend Dave for help, because he probably already knows how to do it. That's why he suggested it as the homework. I'm onto your game. All right, cool. Thanks for coming on time. Go in peace.